in the grand kingdom of Eldoria, where ancient towers pierced the morning mist and golden banners fluttered in the cool breeze, Captain Marcus Thornfield stood at attention outside the royal nursery. His polished armor gleamed under the soft light filtering through stained glass windows, and his hand rested confidently on the pommel of his ceremonial sword. For 15 years he had served the royal guard with unwavering loyalty. But today felt different. Something in the air whispered of approaching storm clouds. The 3 royal children of King Edmund and the late Queen Isabella had become the light of the kingdom after their mother's tragic passing 2 winters ago. Princess Aria, now 8 years old, possessed her mother's gentle spirit and her father's keen intelligence. Prince Oliver, 6, showed remarkable courage for his age and had already begun training with wooden swords under Marcus's watchful eye. Little Princess Luna, barely 4, charmed everyone with her infectious laughter and curious nature that led her to explore every corner of the castle. Lady Vivian Blackthorne had arrived at court 6 months ago, presenting herself as a distant cousin of the late queen with documents proving her noble lineage. She was elegant and sophisticated, with raven black hair always perfectly arranged and emerald eyes that seemed to see everything. The king, still grieving and overwhelmed with ruling alone, had welcomed her assistance with the children. She quickly established herself as their governess, claiming expertise in royal education and protocol. But Marcus had noticed things others missed. The way Lady Vivian's eyes hardened when she thought no one was watching. How she asked detailed questions about the castle's security measures under the guise of concern for the children's safety. The whispered conversations with strangers in the castle's shadowy alcoves. Most troubling of all, he had overheard her speaking to someone about securing the succession in a way that made his blood run cold. The captain had tried to voice his concerns to King Edmund, but the grieving monarch dismissed them as overprotectiveness. "Lady Vivian has been a blessing," the king had said wearily. "The children adore her and she has noble blood. Perhaps you spend too much time looking for threats that don't exist, old friend." This morning, however, Marcus's instincts screamed danger. A messenger had arrived at dawn with news that rebels in the eastern provinces had declared their own king, claiming the royal line was weak and unworthy. The timing seemed too convenient, especially when Lady Vivian had immediately suggested that the children should be moved to her family's estate for their safety until the rebellion was quelled. As Marcus patrolled the corridors leading to the royal quarters, he noticed unusual activity. Several of Lady Vivian's personal servants were packing trunks and loading them onto carriages in the courtyard. When questioned, they claimed to be preparing for a routine journey, but their nervous glances and hurried movements suggested otherwise. The captain's trained eye also spotted unfamiliar men lingering near the castle gates, dressed as merchants but carrying themselves like soldiers. The children were currently in their afternoon lessons in the East Wing Tower Room, where Lady Vivian insisted they study away from distractions. Marcus had reluctantly agreed to this arrangement, but now he questioned every decision that had given her more access to the royal heirs. His fellow guards, Sir Roland and Sir Garrett, shared his growing unease, but were bound by protocol to follow the king's wishes regarding the children's care. As the sun reached its zenith, casting long shadows through the castle windows, a young kitchen maid named Ilara approached Marcus with trembling hands. She had overheard Lady Vivienne speaking urgently with a cloaked figure in the wine cellar, mentioning something about tonight and before anyone can stop us. The maid's frightened eyes conveyed the seriousness of what she had witnessed, and Marcus knew his worst fears were about to be realized. The captain made a swift decision that would change everything. Rather than wait for official approval or risk the children's safety while bureaucratic wheels turned slowly, he chose to trust his instincts honed by years of protecting the royal family. He sent Sir Roland to discreetly gather loyal guards while dispatching Sir Garrett to keep watch on the East Wing. Marcus himself would confront Lady Vivienne directly, knowing that time was running short and the children's lives might depend on his next actions. The afternoon sun cast dancing shadows through the tall windows of the East Wing as Marcus climbed the winding stone staircase toward the tower room. His footsteps echoed softly in the narrow corridor, each step measured and purposeful. Behind him, 3 of his most trusted guards followed at a respectful distance, their armor muffled by cloth wrappings to avoid alerting anyone to their approach. Lady Vivienne's voice drifted down from the tower room, sweet and melodic as she instructed the children in their lessons about royal lineage and proper etiquette. To any casual observer, it would seem like a perfectly normal afternoon of education for the kingdom's most precious heirs. But Marcus's keen ears caught the subtle undertones in her voice, the barely concealed urgency that suggested she was rushing through topics that normally took weeks to cover. "Now, my dear children," Lady Vivian was saying as Marcus reached the heavy oak door, "it's important to understand that sometimes royalty must make difficult journeys for the good of the kingdom. Your ancestors often traveled to secure alliances and ensure peace. Today, I have wonderful news about just such a journey." Princess Aria's voice, clear and intelligent beyond her years, responded with a question that made Marcus's heart race. "But, Lady Vivian, why would we travel without Papa's permission? He always tells us about trips beforehand, and he seemed surprised when I mentioned your suggestion at breakfast." There was a pause, and Marcus could almost picture Lady Vivian's carefully composed expression faltering for just a moment. When she spoke again, her tone carried a harder edge that she quickly softened. "Your father has many concerns weighing on his mind, dear one. Sometimes adults must make quick decisions to protect the people they love most. Think of it as an exciting adventure, like the stories of brave princes and princesses who helped save their kingdoms." Prince Oliver's younger voice joined the conversation with the blunt honesty that only children possess. "But I don't want an adventure without Papa. And why are your servants loading so many trunks? Cook said they took enough food for a month's journey. Are we going somewhere for a very long time?" Marcus pressed his ear closer to the door, his hand instinctively moving to his sword hilt. Through the wood he could hear Lady Vivian moving around the room, her silk dress rustling with what sounded like agitated movements. Little Princess Luna's voice, sweet and trusting, cut through the tension like a bell. "Lady Vivian, why do you look worried? Your face is all red like when Cook burns the bread. Are you feeling sick? Maybe we should call Papa." The governess's laugh came out strained and artificial. "Of course not, darling Luna. I'm simply excited about our wonderful journey. Now, children, I need you to gather your most precious belongings quickly. We'll be leaving very soon and there won't be time later. Think of it as a game where you must pack your treasures as fast as possible." Marcus had heard enough. The woman was clearly preparing to remove the children from the castle under false pretenses, and her growing agitation suggested she knew her window of opportunity was closing. He signaled to his guards, who took positions flanking the door, then knocked firmly but not aggressively on the heavy wood. "Lady Vivian, this is Captain Thornfield. His Majesty has requested my presence to discuss the children's security arrangements for any upcoming travels." The silence that followed stretched for several heartbeats too long. When Lady Vivian finally responded, her voice had regained its composed quality, but Marcus detected the slight tremor that betrayed her inner turmoil. "Of course, Captain. Please, do come in. The children and I were just discussing the importance of preparation and readiness." As Marcus entered the circular tower room, his experienced gaze took in every detail within seconds. The children sat around a polished wooden table laden with maps, books, and scrolls, but their expressions showed confusion rather than excitement about any proposed journey. Lady Vivian stood near the tall window that overlooked the courtyard, and Marcus noticed her positioning allowed her to monitor the activity of her servants loading the carriages below. More telling were the details that confirmed his suspicions. 3 small traveling bags sat by the door, already packed with what appeared to be the children's belongings. A second table held traveling clothes, laid out in their exact sizes. Most suspicious of all, a sealed letter bearing the royal seal sat prominently displayed, though Marcus was certain the king had written no such authorization for the children's departure. "Lady Vivian," Marcus said formally, his voice carrying the authority of his position while remaining respectful. "I'm afraid there seems to be some confusion about travel arrangements for their royal highnesses. His Majesty has given no orders for the children to leave the castle at this time, particularly given the current unrest in the eastern provinces." The woman's emerald eyes flashed with something dangerous before she composed herself. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, Captain. I have written authorization from the king himself, recognizing the danger posed by the current rebellion, and approving the children's temporary relocation to my family's secured estate until peace is restored." She moved toward the table and lifted the sealed document, but Marcus noticed her hands weren't entirely steady. Princess Aria, with her keen observation skills, looked between the adults with growing concern, while Prince Oliver clutched his wooden practice sword protectively. Little Luna seemed to sense the tension and moved closer to her older sister. "I would be happy to verify that authorization with His Majesty directly," Marcus replied smoothly. "But first, I must insist that the children remain in the castle until such verification is complete. I'm sure you understand that their safety is paramount, and protocol exists for very good reasons." Lady Vivian's carefully maintained facade began to crack as she realized her plan was unraveling. The children, sensing something was wrong, looked to Captain Marcus with relief, recognizing him as their trusted protector. Outside the window, Marcus could see his own guards taking positions around the carriages in the courtyard, quietly but efficiently surrounding Lady Vivian's suspicious servants. Part 3. The tension in the tower room thickened like morning fog as Lady Vivian clutched the forged document against her chest, her emerald eyes darting between Captain Marcus and the 3 royal children who had begun to sense something was terribly wrong. Princess Arya, wise beyond her years, slowly stood from her chair and positioned herself protectively in front of her younger siblings, a gesture that made Marcus's heart swell with pride even in this dangerous moment. "Lady Vivian," Prince Oliver said with the directness that only a 6-year-old could manage, "why is Captain Marcus talking about Papa not giving permission? You said Papa wanted us to go on this adventure. Did you tell us something that wasn't true?" The governess's carefully constructed composure cracked further, and Marcus saw a flash of something cold and calculating in her expression. She had spent months gaining the children's trust, positioning herself as their caring protector. But now the innocent questions of the very children she sought to manipulate were exposing her deception. "Children sometimes don't understand the complexities of adult decisions," she said, her voice taking on a sharper edge that made little Luna step closer to her sister. "Captain Marcus is being overly cautious, as guards often are. We really must leave now if we're to reach safety before nightfall." Marcus stepped forward, his hand resting openly on his sword hilt in a clear message. "Lady Vivian, I must ask you to step away from the children while we sort out this confusion. Sir Roland and Sir Garrett are currently speaking with His Majesty about these travel arrangements you claim to have authorized." What Marcus didn't mention was that Sir Roland was actually stationed in the courtyard, coordinating with the loyal guards to quietly surround the suspicious carriages and their occupants. Sir Garrett was indeed seeking the king, but to inform him of the immediate danger to his children, not to verify any legitimate travel documents. Lady Vivian's mask finally slipped completely, revealing the calculating schemer beneath. "You fool," she hissed, abandoning all pretense of genteel nobility. "Do you think your loyalty to a weak king will matter when the Eastern Rebellion succeeds? Those children represent the future of this kingdom, and I intend to ensure they're on the winning side when the dust settles." Princess Arya gasped, finally understanding that their trusted governess had been deceiving them all along. "You're not really our cousin, are you? You're working with the bad people Papa told us about, the ones trying to hurt our kingdom." The revelation hit Prince Oliver like a physical blow, and his young face crumpled with the betrayal. "But you said you loved us. You helped me practice my letters and told Luna bedtime stories. Why would you want to take us away from Papa?" Lady Vivian's laugh was bitter and cold, nothing like the warm sounds the children had grown accustomed to hearing. "Love? Children, you'll learn that love is a luxury that nobles cannot afford. Power, security, and choosing the winning side. Those are what matter in the real world." Marcus had heard enough. With a subtle gesture, he signaled to his guards outside the door, while keeping his attention focused on the increasingly unstable woman before him. "Lady Vivienne, you are under arrest for conspiracy against the crown and attempted kidnapping of the royal heirs. Surrender peacefully, and you will be treated according to your claimed noble status." Instead of surrendering, Lady Vivian moved with surprising speed toward the window, producing a small silver whistle from her sleeve. Before Marcus could stop her, she blew 3 sharp blasts that echoed across the courtyard below. Almost immediately, shouts erupted from outside as her confederates received the signal to begin their escape attempt. The sound of clashing steel rang up from the courtyard as Lady Vivian's hired men engaged with the royal guards. Marcus had expected this possibility and was prepared, but he hadn't anticipated the woman's next desperate move. She lunged toward little Princess Luna, clearly intending to use the youngest child as a shield for her escape. "Stay back, Captain, or the little princess will pay for your interference," Lady Vivian snarled, but she had underestimated both Marcus's reflexes and the courage of the royal children themselves. Princess Arya, moving with instincts inherited from generations of warrior royalty, grabbed her sister's hand and pulled her away from Lady Vivian's reaching grasp. Prince Oliver, despite his young age, swung his wooden practice sword at the governess's legs, causing her to stumble just enough to give Marcus the opening he needed. In one fluid motion, the captain stepped between Lady Vivienne and the children while drawing his sword. The blade sang as it cleared the scabbard, and its polished steel caught the afternoon light streaming through the tower window. "Your plot ends here, madam. The children are under the protection of the royal guard, and no harm will come to them while I draw breath." Lady Vivienne, now cornered and desperate, pulled a slender dagger from her dress, its blade gleaming wickedly in the sunlight. "You think your sword and noble sentiments can stop what's already in motion? Even if you prevent me from taking the children today, there are others who will succeed where I have failed. The rebellion will not be denied its victory." The children huddled together behind Marcus, their trust in their protector absolute despite the terrifying situation unfolding before them. Princess Arya held her younger siblings close, whispering words of comfort, while keeping her eyes on the captain's strong figure standing between them and danger. Marcus could hear his guards advancing up the stairway, their measured footsteps growing closer with each passing second. But he also knew that desperate people often made dangerously unpredictable choices, and Lady Vivian's wild eyes suggested she was capable of anything in her current state. Part 4. The standoff in the tower room stretched taut as a bowstring, with Captain Marcus positioned protectively between the treacherous governess and the 3 royal children who pressed close together behind him. Lady Vivian's dagger trembled in her grip, whether from fear or rage Marcus couldn't determine, but her wild eyes suggested she had passed beyond rational thought into the realm of desperate action. From the courtyard below, the sounds of battle continued as loyal guards clashed with Lady Vivian's hired conspirators. The sharp ring of steel on steel shouted commands, and the thunder of horses' hooves created a chaotic symphony that underscored the gravity of the situation. Marcus knew his men were skilled and loyal, but he also understood that Lady Vivian's plot had been months in the making, and likely involved more conspirators than those currently engaged in the courtyard. "Listen to me carefully, Lady Vivian," Marcus said in his most authoritative voice while keeping his sword ready but not threatening. "Whatever promises the rebels have made to you, whatever gold they've offered, it's not worth the lives of innocent children. You still have a choice to end this without further bloodshed." The woman's laugh was sharp and brittle, like breaking glass. "Innocent? These children represent a dynasty that has grown weak and complacent. The eastern provinces burn with rebellion because King Edmund cannot make the hard choices necessary to maintain order. At least with me, the children would live to see adulthood, even if under different circumstances." Princess Arya, despite her fear, stepped slightly forward, her young voice carrying surprising strength. "My papa is not weak. He chose love over war when Mama died, and he chose to trust people instead of living in fear. That doesn't make him weak, it makes him good." Her words seemed to strike Lady Vivian like physical blows, and for a moment something almost like shame flickered across her features. But it was quickly replaced by hardened resolve. "Goodness is a luxury that rulers cannot afford, child. Your father's goodness will be the death of this kingdom, and possibly the death of you and your brothers." Prince Oliver, clutching his wooden sword with determination that would have made his ancestors proud, spoke up with the fierce loyalty that burned in royal blood. "Captain Marcus won't let anything happen to us. He promised Mama before she went to the angels that he would always protect us, and he never breaks his promises." The mention of the late Queen Isabella brought tears to Marcus's eyes, remembering that sacred vow he had made at her deathbed. She had gripped his hand with surprising strength for someone so ill and whispered, "Promise me, Marcus. Promise me you'll keep them safe when I cannot." He had given that promise without hesitation, and he intended to honor it with his life if necessary. Heavy footsteps on the stone stairway announced the arrival of reinforcements, and Marcus heard the familiar voices of Sir Roland and Sir Garrett coordinating with the other guards. But Lady Vivian heard them too. and desperation drove her to one final reckless gambit. "If I cannot have the children," she snarled, raising the dagger higher, "then perhaps the rebellion will be content with the symbolic victory of their deaths. At least then they cannot grow up to perpetuate their father's weak rule." She lunged forward, not toward the children directly, but at Marcus himself, hoping to get past his guard and reach the royal heirs beyond. But the captain had been trained by the finest swordsmen in the kingdom, and his reflexes had been honed by years of real combat. His blade moved in a silver arc, deflecting her dagger while his other hand caught her wrist in an iron grip. The struggle lasted only seconds, but those seconds stretched like hours in Marcus's perception. He was intensely aware of the children's sharp intakes of breath behind him, of Lady Vivian's perfume mixing with the smell of steel and leather, of the way sunlight caught on the dagger's edge as it flew from her grasp to clatter harmlessly on the stone floor. Sir Roland and Sir Garrett burst through the door just as Marcus pinned Lady Vivian's arms behind her back, their swords drawn and ready for whatever threat they might face. The sight of their captain in control of the situation and the children safe behind him brought visible relief to their weathered faces. "The courtyard is secure, Captain," Sir Roland reported briskly. "We captured most of the conspirators alive, though a few escaped on horseback toward the eastern road. The king is on his way up, and he's quite concerned about what he's learned." Little Princess Luna, who had been remarkably brave throughout the ordeal, finally allowed her tears to fall as the immediate danger passed. She ran to Marcus and wrapped her small arms around his leg, her voice muffled against his armor. "I was scared, Captain Marcus, but I knew you wouldn't let the bad lady hurt us." Marcus felt his heart clench with protective love for these children who had shown such courage in the face of betrayal and danger. As Sir Garrett secured Lady Vivian with iron shackles, Marcus knelt down to Luna's level and gathered all three children in his arms, his voice gentle despite the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "You were all incredibly brave today," he told them solemnly. "Your mother would have been so proud of how you protected each other and trusted in your guards to keep you safe. That's what real royalty looks like. Not just wearing crowns and living in castles, but having the courage to do what's right, even when you're frightened." The sound of running footsteps announced King Edmund's arrival, and moments later the monarch burst through the doorway, his face pale with fear and fury. When he saw his children safe in Marcus's protective embrace, his legs nearly buckled with relief. Part 5. King Edmund stood in the doorway of the tower room, his chest heaving from having run through the castle corridors, his usually composed royal bearing forgotten in his desperate fear for his children's safety. His dark hair was disheveled, his crown sat askew on his head, and his royal robes were rumpled from his haste. When his eyes fell upon his three children safe in Captain Marcus's protective embrace, the relief that washed over his face was profound enough to bring tears to the eyes of the hardened guards present. "Papa!" Princess Luna cried out, breaking free from Marcus's arms and running to her father with the uncomplicated joy that only small children can express after surviving great fear. King Edmund swept her up in his arms, burying his face in her soft hair, as if to convince himself that she was truly safe and unharmed. Princess Arya and Prince Oliver followed more slowly, still processing the betrayal they had experienced and the danger they had narrowly escaped. King Edmund gathered them all close, his voice thick with emotion as he whispered words of love and reassurance that only they could hear. Lady Vivian, now securely shackled between Sir Roland and Sir Garrett, watched this reunion with an expression that mixed defiance with something that might have been regret. Her elaborate governess disguise was disheveled, her perfectly arranged hair falling loose around her face, and the elegant nobility she had projected for months had been stripped away to reveal the calculating schemer beneath. "Your Majesty," Captain Marcus said formally, rising to his feet and offering a respectful bow, "Lady Vivian stands accused of conspiracy against the crown, attempted kidnapping of the royal heirs, and treason. Her confederates in the courtyard have been captured or driven off, though some escaped to the east, presumably to report their failure to the rebel leaders." King Edmund's eyes, still red with unshed tears of relief, turned toward the woman who had gained his trust through deception and nearly succeeded in stealing his most precious treasures. The transformation in his expression was remarkable, from the grieving, somewhat overwhelmed monarch to the steel-backed ruler that his bloodline had produced for generations. "Lady Vivian Blackthorn," he said, his voice carrying the full weight of royal authority. or whatever your true name might be, you have committed crimes against the crown that in our ancestors' time would have meant immediate execution. You exploited my grief, manipulated my children's trust, and nearly succeeded in destroying what remains of my family. The false governess lifted her chin defiantly, showing no remorse for her actions. Your grief made you weak, Edmund. Your kingdom crumbles while you mourn a dead queen instead of securing your throne. The children would have been safer with me than they will be when the rebellion reaches your gates. Princess Arya, wise beyond her 8 years, looked up at her father with eyes that held both love and a new understanding of the burdens he carried.
Papa, she told us that love makes rulers weak, but that's not true, is it?
Love made Captain Marcus brave enough to protect us, and love made you trust people enough to let her near us. Sometimes love means making hard choices, but it doesn't make you weak. The king knelt down to his daughter's level, his hands gentle on her shoulders as he spoke words that the guards would remember and repeat for years to come. My dear Arya, love is indeed what makes us strong enough to rule justly. Your mother taught me that a kingdom built on fear crumbles from within, while a kingdom built on love and trust can weather any storm. Yes, sometimes that trust is betrayed, as it was today, but that doesn't mean we stop trusting entirely. It means we choose more carefully whom we trust. Prince Oliver, still clutching his wooden sword, stepped forward with the earnest determination that would serve him well when he eventually became a knight himself. Papa, I want to learn to fight like Captain Marcus, so I can protect our family too. And I want to learn to tell the difference between good people and bad people who pretend to be good. King Edmund smiled at his son, the first genuine smile any of them had seen from him in months. Those are worthy goals, my brave son. Captain Marcus will indeed train you in swordplay when you're older, and I will teach you the art of reading people's hearts. But remember, even the wisest rulers sometimes make mistakes in judgment. What matters is learning from those mistakes and having loyal friends to help us when we falter. Sir Roland cleared his throat respectfully, drawing the king's attention to practical matters that needed immediate attention. Your Majesty, what are your orders regarding the prisoner and the security of the castle? The escaped conspirators will certainly report back to the rebel leaders, and they may attempt other plots against the royal family. King Edmund rose to his full height, and those present could see the transformation from grieving father back to ruling monarch. The near loss of his children had awakened something in him that had been dormant since Queen Isabella's death. The fierce protectiveness and clear-eyed determination that had made his ancestors great rulers. Lady Vivienne will be held in the Tower prison to await trial for treason, he declared. Increase the guard on the children by half, and I want background investigations conducted on every servant and courtier who has access to the royal quarters. Captain Marcus, I owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid. You have proven today why I trust you above all others with my family's safety. Marcus bowed deeply, but his eyes remained alert and watchful. Your Majesty, I was simply fulfilling my oath to protect the royal family. However, I recommend that we consider additional security measures. This plot was sophisticated and well-planned, suggesting that the rebels have resources and intelligence we may have underestimated. As the sun began to set outside the tower windows, casting long shadows across the circular room where so much drama had unfolded, King Edmund gathered his children close once more. The events of this day had changed them all. The children had learned that the world contained dangers and deceptions they had never imagined, while the king had rediscovered the strength that came from having something precious to protect. Come, he said to his children, his voice warm with love and resolve. Let's go to the great hall for dinner together as a family. Tomorrow we will begin making changes to ensure that nothing like this can ever threaten our family again. But tonight, we celebrate that we are all safe and together. As they left the tower room, Captain Marcus and his guards escorting them with heightened vigilance, Lady Vivienne was led away in chains to face the consequences of her treachery. The kingdom of Eldoria had weathered its first serious threat to the royal succession, and though challenges lay ahead, the bonds of trust and love that held the royal family together had proven stronger than the schemes of those who would tear them apart. The castle settled into evening quiet, but it was the quiet of watchful protectors rather than peaceful slumber. For everyone now understood that the price of safety was eternal vigilance, and the greatest treasures of any kingdom were not gold or jewels, but the bonds of family and the loyalty of those sworn to protect them.